Hey everyone, this is episode number 22 of the GamersCircle Show, and I'm your host, Andy Wood. And this is the show where I talk about comic books and gaming. Now normally, this is where I go into my little intro spiel where I say, on the comic book side of things, I'm going to tell you about some comic book news, but I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I am not going to pass along any comic book news, so instead for this week's episode I'm going to replace it with a comic book Q&A that I have collected. But I'm still going to tell you about some of the comic books I've been reading and what I think, and I'm also going to tell you what's coming out new this week. Now, since I'm also a gamer, again, I am going to not pass along any gaming news. Again, I have a question and answer that I will replace, but I'm still going to tell you about what I've been gaming, and what I think. Comic book code, comic book code, comic book code time. Now, I am still catching up. Well, yes, I am personally still catching up on reading. I got a little bit behind, but I did read a ton of comics over the holidays, and since I didn't do a show, I have a ton. I don't think they actually weigh a ton. I just am using that term because I need to stretch this out, because I'm going to put 2 comic book codes, and for those of you that are new or are returning, the comic book codes are either Marvel or DC codes that you can go to the respective redemption sites, ooh, big word for me, where you can take these codes, redeem them, there will be some links below, for said comic book titles. Download them to your devices, whether it's a PC, mobile device, a tablet, or what have you, and then you will have a, check this out, free comic book, digital of course, that you can read wherever you read comics. So that's pretty cool. Free comic books. And there's 2. Alright, so normally this is the part of the show where I pass along some of that comic book news, but I have replaced it this week for some questions and answers. I've gotten these questions via Google+, Twitter, a couple Facebook messages, a couple direct emails. So here we go. The first question I've got is, what is my favorite comic book? And that is always the hardest question to answer, because people will always come into the store, they'll say, hey, what's the best comic book? And it's one of those things that's like, what's your favorite ice cream? Now, that may always be an easy question to ask, but over time, things could change. You know, you could have a fan favorite of like strawberry, and then all of a sudden over time you get tired of strawberry and you switch to Rocky Road or something like that. And that's the same thing with comics. But historically, one of my favorite comics I like to reflect back to was, I think the first series that I really got into was the Uncanny X-Men from the 70s and 80s. And that was the Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Dave Cockrum, Terry Austin era. And there was some fantastic stories. And those were like probably the best X-Men stories I have ever read. It went through some great story arcs with Jean Grey becoming Phoenix, going to Dark Phoenix. She became the Black Queen, so she kind of was the leader of the Hellfire Club for a while. There was some great stuff with Arcade. All sorts of really, really great stories that spanned for like, I don't know, 5 years maybe. And I'm not saying that the Uncanny X-Men of today are any less entertaining, but back then it had a pretty good impact on what you thought of the X-Men. And it's interesting because when you read those stories, you actually can kind of see some residuals of what's taking place. So they actually paid attention to the continuity, and it even kind of shows up in the movies a little bit. So now, what is my favorite comic book of today? Again, that's hard because every single week I adjust my read pile about what comes in, and it all depends. But if I was having to pick, I would say that right now my top 3 in no particular order would be Superior Spider-Man, All New X-Men, and The Walking Dead. Next question. Alright, the next question is, what was the first comic book I ever read? I'm gonna kind of separate out that because I was never a comic book collector at first. I was kind of a carnivore, I guess, a comic book carnivore. My mother would take me to a local drugstore. It was called a Rexall back then, and they had a turnstile where they had comics, and she would go do her shopping, and I was just at home, very content with that turnstile of comic books, where I would just grab random things and read, but I gravitated for some reason towards Richie Rich. So Richie Rich was my first comic book. It was a Richie Rich, Sad Sack, or maybe it was, Sad Sack, and there's another one in there. I think it was probably Casper. Those are the three earliest comic books I can actually remember reading. However, what was the first comic book I ever collected? Well, as I said in the previous question and answer, was the Uncanny X-Men. That was the first title that I seriously started taking off the shelf, bagging and boarding, preserving, collecting, and reading. Next question. What is the most expensive comic that I own? I don't do a whole lot of pricing, and the market is, it's a fickle market when it comes to comic books, because it's always what's hot is hot, what's not is not. And there's a lot of single issue comic books that are extremely rare, and those are always going to be most expensive. And I do not own a first appearance of Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman or anything like that. But I've got a couple of first appearances of Wolverine. I've got the death of Gwen Stacy, first appearance of Venom, first appearance of Rogue, and stuff like that. So I've got some fairly early stuff. I don't have any Golden Age comics that are highly valuable in my personal collection. That is my comic book Q&A. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the part of the show where I refer to it as Andy's Rack.
Nice rack.
Oh, no. All right, so I've actually bunched up a lot of comics and have kind of been making my own little trade paperback. And what I've read, though, is DC's got this fantastic story arc going on right now, Forever Evil. If you're not reading Justice League of America, you probably should, because it's got some interesting side stories, especially one is Stargirl and Martian the Manhunter are trying to figure out, I think, what's going on with the Justice League. And I think they're getting close. It's hard to tell because, unfortunately, Stargirl and Martian Manhunters are kind of dealing with some inner demons themselves. Stargirl is like shifting back and forth between her current persona and her past, but yet it's intermixed with some stuff that Martian the Manhunter or John's trying to help her out with. And it's really messed up. I mean, not for her, for Stargirl. I mean, the story is pretty solid. But John, Martian Manhunter, is trying to help her using his ability to stay focused, stay centered, to break out of this. They all early on thought they were in some sort of a prison, some sort of a confinement, and they are figuring out what it is. Martian the Manhunter later on has to deal with Clayface, or to Stargirl. So those two together in this title are up against Despero, who has never been one of my fan favorites, but when all the bad guys are taking over the world, well, he's not such a chump after all. Another bunch of sorry for the tongue ties there. Another bunch of cluster of comics that I put together was Iron Man. Now, Iron Man has always been my favorite because he's got cool toys, okay? Now, he went through this huge story about the origin of Tony Stark. And a lot of you are going, well, according to the movie, he's Iron Man because of either, if you look at old school, it was Vietnam, or based on the movies, it was in Iraq. Well, in the comic book, they kind of switched up his origin. Not that didn't actually happen to him, but how he became who he became. And evidently, and spoiler alert, if you're not caught up, his dad made a deal with a futuristic android. Long story short, Tony Stark was not the only child of the Starks. They had another one. But Tony was going to not either survive the birth, or he was going to be defective, I think. And the futuristic android passed along some technology and altered Tony, so when he was born, he would A, survive, and B, he would grow up to be the smart, debonair guy. I don't know. But it turns out that Tony Stark has a brother who's confined to an iron lung. Very smart young man, a little bit younger than Tony. Oh, they're about the same age. And together they've decided to embark on a mission to build a city, a better city, kind of a utopia for humankind, for mankind. And it's, working, as Tony Stark revealed to his brother that he's Iron Man. Everyone actually knew that. So his brother actually operates remotely drones, Iron Man drones. So they're a team. There's some side stories going on that all through this whole story arc, the origin of and whatnot, Tony put a new suit together, a new AI, and he nicknamed it Pepper. And in the recent issues, though, he actually reveals to the real Pepper that he's got a new AI for the suit, that it's called Pepper. And at first, she didn't like it. And then once she met the Pepper AI, she goes, "Oh, I like her." So, but he didn't keep the name Pepper. He changed it to Helen, and we don't know what that stands for yet. And another side story is that the Mandarin has expired. He's died, but his rings are trying to find new hosts. So it's kind of like when a lantern dies, a green lantern or a red lantern, it goes finds a new owner. So that's what these 10 rings of Mandarin are doing. They're trying to find new owners, but they're doing it individually. And so we have that. I haven't been real happy with the current story arcs of Iron Man, but I am a fan of Iron Man, so I mortar through it, and that's what I've been reading. What are the new comics for the week of February 12th, 2014? All New X-Men 23, The Trial of Jean Grey, Part 3. Jean is on trial, and it's up to the All New X-Men and the Guardians of the Galaxy to get her free. Batgirl number 28. It's a hazardous reunion between Batgirl and the former Court of Owls assassin Strix as they face off against a lethal new threat known as Silver, the man who knows the secret of Gotham City's conspiracy of Bat. Deadpool number 23. Deadpool vs. S.H.I.E.L.D. Part 3. One helicarrier full of troops, one deadly creature intent on killing them all, a creature named Deadpool. Superman Wonder Woman number 5. Fiora has joined Zod, and now Earth must kneel before their combined might. Even Superman and Wonder Woman can't stop their plan for the Phantom Zone. Alright folks, so this part of the show is where I would pass along some gaming news, but instead I'm going to replace it this week for a gaming Q&A, and I've only got a couple questions. I had a ton of questions for the comic book, but I only have a couple for the gaming part. So I guess people don't know I play games. I play lots of games. The first question I got is, what is my favorite game? My favorite game that I always will bring up is, it's probably one of the worst games in the world. It's called Captive. And I played this game on the Commodore Amiga, which then, you can get it for the PC, and I actually do have it, but it actually won't run on today's PCs. You have to use DOSBot or DOSBox to kind of dumb down your PC so it'll run. Otherwise, it runs too fast and it crashes all the time. And what Captive is, when I bought this game originally, and you opened it up, all you got was two things. You got, well, for the time, you got a floppy disk. Sorry. You got a floppy disk and a warranty card for the game. And that was it. There was no instructions. And keep in mind, when I first bought this game, there was no internet. So it's not like I could go online and try to find a manual. And as you put in the floppy and start the game, it turns out that your character committed a crime. And they don't even tell you what the crime is. And you are sentenced to life imprisonment in suspended animation. Bummer. But something happens where you are housed, a war breaks out or an earthquake or something, and you come out of it and you wake up in your cell. And the only thing you have is a briefcase, and when you open it, you have 4 little monitors, and what you find out is you have the remote control accessibility to 4 robots. 2 of them are humanoid and 2 of them are robotic. And what you can do is you could actually see through their eyes so you could see what they could do, and you basically were using these robots to explore and, I guess, find yourself and release yourself. And the concept of the game was brilliant. And it was very simplistic. Later on, you found weapons and all sorts of stuff, and You could upgrade your robots, but they ran on batteries, so you had to charge them. And since there was no manual, it was just like pure just luck that you figure out that there's little light sockets on the bottom of these walls that you could take the chest plate off, and charge it. So, word of mouth eventually gets around to you figure out how to do this. And I stopped playing the game because there is an end. Each level of the game has got 10 planets you go to, and each planet gets increasingly worse. And each time you get to the 10th planet, you actually find yourself, and right as you step forward, all of a sudden, the wall opens up behind you, you're grabbed by an alien, and you do the next level. So, later on I found out that to finish the game, there was 65,535 levels. So multiply that by 10, and that's how many planets you have to visit. And I think I got up to like level 10. And it just got really hard, and I think I would have been still playing it. So that is a game that I always like to tell people about, but a game that me and my gaming group just played the death out of was StarCraft, and then, of course, the expansion Brood War. We played against the AI, we created our own maps, and stuff like that. And that game was so well balanced, so it didn't matter if you played Zerg or the humans or the Protoss. And we would always try different variations. We would always say, okay, we're going to be the humans versus the Zerg and stuff like that. And we had just so many years and years of faithful playing when we used... we had to use a tool called Kali on Windows 95 because at the time there wasn't a whole lot of... the internet was around, but it was all dial-up, and the only way you could really play a game cooperatively was over a local network. You had to use IPX. So for those of you who know what that is, so we used Kali, which was an IPX or a TCP IP wrapper. So it would take the IPX packet, wrap it around TCP, and transmit it so we could actually play over the internet. So that's how we played when we weren't within the same city. So nowadays, what is my favorite game? You know, I have to say I almost go through a game a month. And what is the game that I've played within the last couple of years that had such a huge lasting impression? I would have to actually say Far Cry 3. I never played the other ones, and when I first started playing Far Cry, I was a little intimidated because you had to collect stuff and you had to craft stuff, and you did that in an MMO, but, you know, in an MMO, you don't feel so pace-pressured, to where in Far Cry 3 you have all these things you have to do, and you kind of feel like, the story's not going to proceed unless I do all this stuff. So Far Cry 3 was like a really awesome game. It was solid. It was fun. I liked the whole... elements of, you know, there was a main story, some side stories and stuff like that, and so good game. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what have I been playing this past week? Well, I have finally finished Assassin's Creed 4. I think I stated that in the previous show, and then I moved back on to the... I'm laughing because I can't believe it took me so long to finish this game. Lego Marvel Superheroes. Now, if you watch the videos... I was extremely challenged by this game. I guess you just have to be a youngster to play it, because playing this game was so much fun. You're just mashing stuff, and it's like, it's not one of those games if you die, the game's over. You come back and you keep going at it. So it was like this whole, you know, different level of, I'm just going to smash stuff, and if I die, I die. I don't come back. I don't have to redo stuff. But there was some stuff you had to figure out. There were some puzzles, which was kind of challenging to me because I couldn't figure them out. So I finally finished the game, got to the very end. I won't tell you the end of it. But what I find is my percentage, I think, when I finished was 11%. And I was scared because as I was progressing this game, you get the gold Legos. And I think I ended up with, 13 of 250? Oh my God! So, I know I could probably go back to the game, and there's some racing stuff you can do. You could probably grab some supervillains and go redo some missions and stuff, I guess. I don't know. But I have since moved on to Tomb Raider, and OMG, this game is so incredible. I don't know why I didn't get it when it first came out. and I'm still playing it. And the game has got suspense. The story is unfolding so well developed. The graphics are awesome. I'm a terrible shot with a bow and arrow. I keep dying when I see wolves. So I look very much forward to playing this game and hopefully not dying as many times. But that's what I have been playing. All right, folks, that is the show for this week. I am sorry if it wasn't so informative. I hope you liked the question and answers. Again, as always, the feedback that you guys give me is so incredible. It just makes me want to do more shows, but I don't have the time. I wish I did. It's just not as simple as just sitting down and recording stuff. I have to kind of prepare stuff and then try to talk somewhat fluently, which doesn't always turn out because I'm still nervous in front of this camera. So, again, thank you so much for this feedback. Again, if you know anyone at all that you think might enjoy any of this, might get anything out of it, pass the link along, share the video, because the more people that subscribe, the more likes I get. It's just more encouragement for me to keep going forward and doing this, and I do have a ton of fun trying to pass along stuff that you guys may or may not know. That seems to be my catch line, you may or may not know. And as always, folks, over to the sides here, you'll see links from the previous show. You'll see some links that will take you to some of my Let's Play video games. Down below, you'll see a great big button that says subscribe. So if you're not subscribing to the YouTube channel, it's an easy way for you to subscribe. And there's also a button to my Google Plus profile where I do most of my social networking socializing. So again, remember, try to visit your local comic book store. Every Wednesday is New Comic Book Day, so it's like New Christmas Day for comic book folk every week. So, thanks, Lynn. You guys have a fantastic week. See you next time.